Hey guys, it's Brent, and I'm back with another track versus track video, and I've got my co-host with me, Carla. And if Carla looks a little tired, it's because we're on take 3 of this now, because we had me mess something up in the beginning the first time. We got a little further the second time, realized my mic was muted for most of what we were talking about. So we've had to start over. This is track versus track, take 3. We do this for you guys. So we're basically going to go back and try to capture lightning in the bottle again. And we're going to talk about Destroyer versus Hotter Than Hell again. It's just you didn't get to see the first 1.5 times. So Carla, it's good to have you back. You're a trooper, hanging in there with me, and we're going to get through it. I promise you, we're going to get through it. All right, so we're going to talk about these 2 albums. We're going to talk about track versus track against Destroyer versus Hotter Than Hell. And regardless if Destroyer wins or loses, I'm going to put it against this album right here, just because I want to see what these 2 would do. But for today, I'm going to throw my albums around and we're going to do these. All right, so let's get right into this track. Let's get right into this panel. So we have me and Carla, of course. YouTube, Michael Avant, Les Wadley, Georgie Halick, Emily Graziano, Jeremy Kimono, Jesse Ray, Travis Mulgard, Future Squash 767, Hard Rock Reverie, Two Gay Dads, Paul Bertolino, Stephen Jones, Gregory Pegg, John B. Good, Jay Reed, Jay Rucker, Joe Pegg, John O., Carolina Hard Rock Metalhead, Roger Bennett, Demetrius K., Trevor Bullock, Raven FM, Super Kiss 1200, Tom Tobin, Sublime 130, Toy Bonnie Guy, Sonic Riccardi. From Twitter, David King, Darren Helliwell, Tom Dust, Andy, Vincent Marone, Bob Zelinka, Vanessa, Tony Rod, Deuce, Bill Sharp. From Instagram, Justin Hansen, Michael Westbrot. From Facebook, Scott Lushka, Matt Ucci, and my boy Scotty Sky. So that is the panel. It's 43 of us, and we're going to get into these tracks. We're going to mention what the track names are going into it. Had a viewer mention that, say, hey, mention what the names of the tracks are so we know, because some of us don't know what tracks are what. So what's your prediction for who's going to win this album and why?
So when I first, realized what 2 albums were going up against each other, I thought, oh, it's going to be Destroyer, no question. And then once I actually made my predictions, I thought, oh, I guess Hotter Than Hell's going to win. So I personally think it's going to be Hotter Than Hell.
I think that Hotter Than Hell was going to win this one too, basically because I think that it's kind of like a lot of people out of the first 3 albums, it's their favorite. You always hear people, they love the debut, but then a lot of people just love the dark, heavy metal muddiness of Hotter Than Hell, the darker subject matter that's on Hotter Than Hell. And they just think that, Destroyer is quite pompous and quite not Kiss. It's very Bob Ezrin influenced, and it is. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I don't think it's going to be a runaway. I think it's going to be tight, and we'll see if Destroyer can be Hotter Than Hell with just 9 official songs and a noise track. If it's so bad, if it's so good, it should be able to. So let's go ahead and get started. Track 1, Got to Choose, off Hotter Than Hell versus Detroit Rock City off of Destroyer. What is your prediction?
I think this is an easy one. I think without a doubt the panel is going to go with Detroit Rock City.
Okay. I thought the panel was going to go with Detroit Rock City also. And me personally, I picked Detroit Rock City because that's my jam. That's my song. And I don't know if I'm ever going to pick that over, any other song over that. Because I just love it so much. So I think it's in this one I love Got to Choose as well, but it's just not the same caliber of song. And so Detroit Rock City, hands down for me on this one personally.
Yes, same with me. I love Got to Choose, but I have a little bit of a personal connection with Detroit Rock City. I was married in Detroit. I love this song. So for me, I had to go with Detroit Rock City.
Okay. The panel picked 38-5. Pretty definitive. Probably one of the most definitive picks on the album. In the track versus track, they picked 38-5 Detroit Rock City over Got to Choose. Got to Choose got 5 points. Detroit Rock City got 38. So that puts Destroyer up by 1 point out of the gate. So it takes us to track 2. Parasite versus King of the Nighttime World.
I think the panel's going to go with Parasite.
I think they were going to go with Parasite as well. King of the Nighttime World is an amazing song, and it is a high caliber song. But I think the cult classic following of the Kiss nerds that love Hotter Than Hell, they love Parasite. So I think that's going to be a hard one to beat on any album that's going up against Hotter Than Hell. I think Parasite's going to come out a winner most of the time for any album that it goes up against for track 2. So that's what I predicted as well. That's also the song that I picked is Parasite because I love that song. It's classic. Ace Frehley penned, and it's just awesome song. It's one of the songs that makes Hotter Than Hell hotter than hell.
Yeah, I agree. I went with Parasite as well. And yeah, Parasite is going to be one of these songs that pretty much when it's put up against any other song, I'm pretty much always going to go with Parasite. I love this song. It was speed metal before speed metal existed. I drink the blue Kool-Aid, had to go with it. So I went with Parasite.
All right. So the panel chose 30-13 on this one. Still pretty definitive. 30-13. Parasite 30. King of the Nighttime World 13. I expected that to be a little closer, but it wasn't, and so that ties it up between the two albums. So going on to track 3, we have Going Blind off of Hotter Than Hell against God of Thunder off of Destroyer.
Yeah, 2 Gene vocals. I thought this was going to be interesting. I think it's going to be God of Thunder, but I think this one's going to be a lot closer.
Okay. I had to go with God of Thunder on this one, prediction-wise, because I just think that God of Thunder is Gene's. It's his calling card. It's his theme song. He created the demon, and I think Going Blind is just not the caliber of song to beat God of Thunder. This was a hard pick between me for the two of these because I love Going Blind dearly, but I went with God of Thunder for my personal pick on this one just because God of Thunder is one of the songs that makes Destroyer what it is. It's one of the facets of it, the multifaceted thing that is Destroyer. So I had to go with it between the two of these as my personal pick between the two.
Yeah, same with me. I had to go with God of Thunder. I mean, I love Going Blind, but God of Thunder is that dark, heavy Kiss song that I love. And, now with Labor Day gone, we're getting into spooky season with Halloween. This is a fall song to me. It's a dark song, and I just love it. So I had to go with God of Thunder.
Well, the panel, this was a little less definitive. The panel actually went with God of Thunder on this one, 26-17. Going Blind scored 17. God of Thunder scored 26. So that takes Destroyer up by 1. So the score is now 2-1. Going into the next track, which is Hotter Than Hell, the title track, versus Great Expectations off of Destroyer.
think the panel is going to choose Hotter Than Hell for this one. They're going with the title track.
Okay. I predicted Hotter Than Hell as well, because a lot of people don't like Great Expectations. A lot of people, they loathe Great Expectations. But for me, I had to go with Great Expectations because just because it is, once again, I'm not a big fan of the version of Hotter Than Hell on this album. I'm not a big fan of the production on Hotter Than Hell, period. Some people love that heavy muddiness. I only like it on certain songs. It sounds good on songs like Parasite. It sounds good on songs like, Watching You and stuff like that. But it sounds good on those kinds of songs. But it just does not sound good on a song like Higher Than Hell to me. I like the live version of Higher Than Hell better. So I went with Great Expectations because it's this big, huge, grandiose thing that Bob Ezrin influenced and helped create. And it is another song that makes Destroyer, Destroyer. So I picked it. It's probably an unpopular pick, but that's what I picked for me personally.
Well, then I'm unpopular with you because I also chose Great Expectations, and I'm not going to gush over the song like I did in the last video. If you want to see me gush over it, check out the last video we did. But this is one of my favorite Kiss songs. I love this song. I think when this song goes up against any other song, I'm probably going to pick Great Expectations. I love it. It's just an amazing song that I'll never get tired of. So, had to go with the underdog. Had to go with Great Expectations.
Well, underdog it is. The panel chose 33-10. The panel chose Higher Than Hell, 33 points. Great Expectations, 10. So me and you were in that minority. We're in the Class C minority. And so we chose Great Expectations. But alas, but that ties it up 2-2 going into the next track. Let Me Go Rock and Roll from Higher Than Hell versus Flaming Youth off of Destroyer.
I think the panel is going to go with Let Me Go Rock and Roll.
I predicted that the panel on this one was going to choose Flaming Youth because it's one of those songs that is not typical Kiss, that is kind of a new sound for them that they came about with Destroyer. But it is that soaring song with, but I know a lot of people don't like the falsetto voices and the calliope or whatever you call it in it. But I still think it's got enough gumption that it could possibly beat Let Me Go Rock and Roll. But for me personally, I picked Let Me Go Rock and Roll because I think it's just a jam. And it's a jam even more on a live, but it's a jam here. And I love it. So I picked it, me personally, as my personal song on this one.
For me, personally, I went with Flaming Youth. Flaming Youth to me is just that song that just has a ton of energy. It's that rally cry, and it's just got a lot of power in it. And Let Me Go Rock and Roll, it's one of the songs off Hotter Than Hell that just, I don't know, it just never worked for me. It just never really got into it. So I had to go with Flaming Youth.
All right. Well, this one was pretty close. This one was the closest so far as win goes. 24-19. The panel chose Let Me Go Rock and Roll 24, Flaming Youth 19. And so that brings Higher Than Hell up by 1. Total score 3-2, with Higher Than Hell leading by 1 point. So that brings us into the next track, which is all the way going up against Sweet Pain.
I know a lot of people have strong opinions about Sweet Pain, and so because of that, I think the panel is going to go with All the Way.
Okay. I predicted that the panel was going to go with Sweet Pain, and I myself went with Sweet Pain just because I kind of biasly wanted Sweet Pain to win because I'm not a fan of All the Way at all, and I know a lot of people are, and I don't get it. I don't. Two of the songs off Harder Than Hell, I don't get why people are into, and that's All the Way and Strange Ways. I don't get those songs. Why everybody thinks they're so great. So I went with Sweet Pain on this one. For me personally, my prediction and my personal pick, Sweet Pain.
Me personally, I went with Sweet Pain. I love this song. To me, I don't get why people don't like this song. I will say though, I don't like the female background singers. I don't like them. But even with them, I still love the song. So I had to go with Sweet Pain.
Mm-hmm. And Sweet Pain, people need to listen to it a little bit more and kind of tune out the background singers and listen to Peter's drumming and listen to some of the guitar work, the little licks and runs that they do, and Peter drummed his ass off on Destroyer, and he's got so many good drumming parts on some of these songs, and everybody always points to Detroit Rock City, as his, peak of his drumming on this album. But Sweet Pain, he does a lot of little cool little fills and turnarounds and stuff in it. So Sweet Pain is great. This was the closest on the album up to this point. 1 point separation. And if we would have had an even number panel, we probably would have had a tie. But with 22 to 21, 1 point separation, 22 for Sweet Pain, 21 for All the Way. So I like to say that my vote helped Sweet Pain win by 1 point. I like to think it was my vote that did it. I accept the award for the Academy, and we'll move on. But that does bring Destroyer up 1 point to tie it up 3-3. And so that takes us to the next track, Watching You off of Harder Than Hell versus Shout It Out Loud from Destroyer.
This is one of those that when you look at it on paper, you think, oh, shout it out loud, no question. But when I really started thinking about the panel and, what Kiss fans really want to listen to, I was thinking, I think they're going to go with the deep cut on this. So I think the panel is going to go with Watching You.
Okay. I predicted that the panel was going to go with Watching You on this one as well. And this is just one of those where my prediction went with my will because I love Watching You. And Watching You is my pick between the two. I love Shout It Out Loud. I've said before, I think Shout It Out Loud should have been Kiss's Rock and Roll All Night. Shout It Out Loud to me should have been their anthem. Nothing slight against Rock and Roll All Night, but I just think Shout It Out Loud is more of an anthem for a band. But Watching You is just a great song, so I picked it as my pick and my prediction.
For me personally, as much as I love Watching You, I had to go with Shout It Out Loud. It's just one of those songs that no matter what mood you're in, no matter where you are, you hear that song and it's like your body resets, and it's just like it's like a cleanse almost. I don't know if I'm getting too deep into Kiss song, but it's so good. And so for me, I had to go with Shout It Out Loud.
Well, this was close. There was a 5 point difference. 24-19. The panel chose Watching You 24, Shout It Out Loud 19, but it was very close. 5 point difference. And so that takes Harder Than Hell up 1 point, 4-3. Going into the next track, two Peter songs against each other. Mainline off of Harder Than Hell versus Beth off of Destroyer.
Yeah, I don't know how many times you're going to have two Peter songs go up against each other, so this is pretty cool. Like Sweet Pain, I know a lot of people have strong opinions about Beth, so I think the panel is going to go with Mainline.
Okay. I thought the panel was going to go with Beth just because I know that I've heard those same strong opinions about Mainline. I think that that Beth didn't fare really well in in previous track versus tracks. But I think that Beth was gonna. I thought that Beth was gonna fare pretty well against Mainline. Two Peter songs. People picked their best favorite song between the two, so I thought it was gonna be Beth. But me personally, I picked Mainline basically because I'm not a big fan of Beth. I respect it, and I think it's a great song and what it did for the band. But Mainline, it's a great Peter vocal. And it just goes right along with the vibe of Hotter Than Hell, and it's one that I don't mind the production on it so much. So it was my pick, Mainline over Beth for me personally.
Yeah, and I was the opposite. So I went with Mainline for the panel, but for me personally, I chose Beth. Peter's vocals on Mainline are some of his best. I love that song. This was really hard for me to choose between the two, but there's just something kind of special about Beth for me, and I think it's because I don't hear it very often. So whenever I do, it's just such a nice song, and I don't know, I just really, really like it. And when I put the two up against each other, my brain just gravitated towards Beth, so that's what I went with.
Little side note here: my favorite version of Beth is the version they do with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra off of Symphony. Mm-hmm. Peter singing Beth with a live orchestra, not a track, a live orchestra behind him. And that's my favorite version of Beth. If you've never heard it, go look it up. It's a great, great, great version of Beth. All right, so what the panel chose, 26-17, not as close as I thought it was going to be. 26-17, the panel chose Mainline over Beth, 26-17. So that takes Hotter Than Hell up 2 points, 5-3. Going into the next to last track, 2 tracks left on the album. 1 track of noise, but still a track because we cheated. So yeah, I only say that because I always have people in the comments saying you cheated, and I'm like, I'm not denying we cheated, because if we would have just said this album was only 9 tracks, we could have only put it against Paul's solo album, we could only put it against Ace's solo album. Do y'all really want this album to go against Paul and Ace's solo album? Do you really? Because you know what, if you do, I'll do it. But if we would have just went 9 tracks, there's a very limited a number of albums this album could have went against. And if it's so good, it should be something with just 9 tracks. I keep saying that, if it's so good. So, next to the last track, Coming Home versus Do You Love Me?
I think the panel is going to go with a Destroyer song for this one. I think they're going to go with Do You Love Me?
All right. I thought that the panel was going to go with Do You Love Me on this as well, because I know everybody loves that song, and I like this song, parts of it. There's parts I don't like, so I have kind of a love-hate relationship with it. So I thought that that's what the panel was going to choose. But me personally, I'm a huge fan of Coming Home. I think Coming Home should have been the last track on the album rather than Strange Ways. Coming Home just sounded like a closer. And so Coming Home to me is great. I was a fan of it before Unplugged came out. I was a fan of this version on this album, and I just think it's great. But I personally picked Coming Home, but I think the panel's going to go with Do You Love Me?
Yeah, I think the panel's going to go with Do You Love Me, and I also chose Do You Love Me for me personally. I love this song. I just think it's a great song, great Paul vocals, and I know you don't like Preacher Paul. I love Preacher Paul, so anytime I get that in a song, I got to go with it. Coming Home, it's just kind of a song that exists on Hotter Than Hell for me. Don't really think about it too often, so up against each other, I had to go with Do You Love Me?
All right. Well, 32-11, the panel chose Do You Love Me over Coming Home. Do You Love Me 32, Coming Home 11. So that put another tick in the win category for Destroyer, and that brings it to 5-4. Going into the last track, can Rock and Roll Hell, Rock and Roll Demons bring Destroyer back? Can it do it? What's your prediction between Strange Ways and Rock and Roll Demons? Or Rock and Roll Party?
I think the panel's going to go with Strange Ways for this one. I don't think Rock and Roll Party will ever have a chance, sadly.
I predicted Strange Ways as well, and I picked Strange Ways. And that's the lesser two evils for me, because I'm not a big fan of Strange Ways. Strange Ways gives me a headache, and it usually gets skipped. I usually never make it to the end of Strange Ways. The solo in it's really good, and that's about all I can say for it, to me personally. But I still picked Strange Ways because Rock and Roll Party is just a track that's a lot of noise, and I wouldn't rather listen to Rock and Roll Party over Strange Ways. I'd really not rather listen to either one of them. So, but I had to pick one, so I picked Strange Ways for me.
I went with Strange Ways as well. I do really like this song. It's a cool mix of Ace and Peter, and I think it's a cool song. You know, it's an Ace song, Peter singing on it. It's a good combo in my opinion. I do like Rock and Roll Party though. I think it's pretty cool, and like I mentioned earlier, you know, we're getting into spooky season, and I think this would be a cool, like if you're in a haunted house and this song comes on, you're freaking out. It's a creepy song, so I like it, but between the two, I had to go with Strange Ways.
So 42-1. 42-1, Strange Ways, 1 Rock and Roll Party. We had 1 Rock and Roll Party. So that took Hotter Than Hell up 6-4. So a lot of people are like, oh, it's not fair, it's not fair. Well, listen, okay, cut off Strange Ways and Rock and Roll Party, it's still 5-4, Hotter Than Hell. So Hotter Than Hell was going to win by 1 point, even if we didn't include the last track. It still would have been. It still would have won. The only way it really would have made a difference is if I thought maybe at one point in time when I was starting to categorize and my spreadsheet shows me at the bottom, for the longest time all the way was clobbering Sweet Pain. And then the last votes, like when I started counting up some of the last ones, it was just like person after person after person after person was picking Sweet Pain. And I literally sat and watched Sweet Pain come back after being down by like 10 points. I watched it come back and beat all the way by 1 point. So that right there, that was going to be the make or break song on this, because the other ones were pretty, they were enough polarized. That basically puts the winner as Hotter Than Hell. What's your favorite album cover between the two of them?
I feel bad because I never pick Hotter Than Hell, and I love the album cover, but I gotta go with Destroyer. It's iconic. It's an awesome illustration. I gotta go with Destroyer.
I've said this before about this album cover. I think this is a horrible picture. And I hate that the fact that the whole album is in color except for the picture. And the picture itself is blurry. There's no detail to it. It's like, and they had a photo shoot over this picture. I like the pictures on the back better than I like the pictures on the front. But this is one of my least favorite album covers. And I know a lot of people love this album cover, but I just don't. I just don't really get it. If this would have been in color, because I've seen the outtakes from this shoot, and these photos were in color. Why they black and whited them out, I have no idea. But yeah, it doesn't hold a chance against this album cover right here. It's iconic, and it's one of the most iconic Kiss album covers. And you hold this up, and if you was like, hey, who is that? They'd be like, that's Kiss. You know, you don't even have to show them the name. So my favorite album cover between these two is Destroyer. So this album got beat by Dress to Kill. It got beat by Hotter Than Hell. And I know some of y'all are chomping at the bit for me to do something with Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun, but I'm going to make you wait another week. At the very least. Because I want to see what this will look like. I want to see what this will look like. I do too. So, I think this is going to be very interesting. And I can already tell you, I know who's going to win the last track. Because there ain't no damn way that Rock and Roll Demons is beating Black Diamond. So we're going to go ahead and put a 1 in the winners on this one. But there's some tracks on this album that I just might pick over on this album. So we'll see. But honestly, if this one is going to be in the debut, is going to slaughter this one, I just want to see how bad. How bad could the bloodshed get, you know? Upcoming track versus tracks you can look forward to is those two. The Destroyer going up against the debut album, and then Rock and Roll Over and Love Gun going up against each other, and then the loser of that album, that going up against some of the previous albums. We are also going to have a special that we're going to throw in around sometime in October. We're going to throw in a special episode having a live and a live 2 go up against each other. And sometime in an episode that will probably premiere sometime around Halloween, we're going to have a track versus track versus track versus track of all 4 solo albums against each other at the same time. So, and I know that, hey, Paul's and Ace's don't have 10 tracks and Gene's has an extra track. What are you going to do about that? You ever heard of handicaps? You ever heard of a handicap? Well, Paul and Ace are going into this with a handicap. They will only have 9 tracks. So for the album that they go against, Gene and Peter's albums, they're going to have an automatic win. Gene and Peter's albums will have an automatic win on those tracks. And I think even Gene's album has 11 tracks, if I'm not mistaken. So Gene may get an extra handicap. And he may very well need it. So be ready for that. Go ahead and start now, because these are coming in October. Kiss, Alive versus Alive 2. Start listening to those albums. And all 4 of the solo albums. This is a time of year in September. I start listening to all 4 solo albums pretty much. I listen to them daily. I listen to Gene's first, then Peter's, then Paul's, then Ace's. And pretty much in that order. That's not the order I like them in, but that's the order I like to listen to them in. And I saved the best for last. Anyway. But 4 albums, track versus track versus track versus track against each other. That's how I figure we're just going to do it, and it'll be a Halloween special around Halloween. And that's what we're going to do. All right, so that's it, guys. We got another one out of the way. This is our 3rd time around for me and Carly. And you guys, wasn't you impressed with our acting skills? We were acting like this wasn't like the 3rd time. We've already said some of this stuff, but we made it through. It only took us an hour and a half to do it, but we made it through. So, anyway, thanks, Carla. You was a real trooper this time around. Sorry I didn't have my mic turned on that last time around.
No worries.
But anyway, we appreciate you guys watching, each and every one of you. Be thinking about who is going to win between Destroyer and Kiss, the debut album, and then be looking forward to those other matchups as well between now and October. And we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Say bye, Carla.
Bye. Bye.
But that does bring Higher Than Hell up. That brings Dress to dang it. We'll move on, but that does bring Sweet Pain up, causing get it together, man. This is outros for the end now.